Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Strange Brews video, where today we are here going to talk about one of Josh's decks. Deck he's been playing quite a lot of recently. Thankfully, for my own personal sanity, I have not had the fortune to run up against it yet, though I might be playing against it. Might be playing against it very soon, hopefully. It is going to be a Urza Lord High Artificer deck, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what the general game plan of this deck is.
Big surprise! It's another Stax deck because I don't know how to play anything else. No.
That's
Urza,
strangely that's oddly depressing.
No, it's oddly fun. Urza is a deck that I would recommend to a lot of people if you would like to play with your commander a bunch, because the entire deck is kind of centered around him, and what a powerful engine he is just on his own. So you're playing a lot of artifacts. You're playing a lot of ways to go infinite with your artifacts, like Dramatic Scepter, and a lot of ways to find that. And your win condition, a lot of your ramp, all of that is in the command zone right from the get-go, so it allows you to play a lot of also very powerful control-y cards because you don't have to go searching for as much. So, like you said, or like I said, you're playing a Stax game plan, so cards like Winter Orb, Trinisphere, Rhystic Study, Back to Basics.
So, Urza has a very particular interaction with three of the particular cards that you just mentioned: Winter Orb, Static Orb, and actually not Static Orb because it doesn't have that text. But Trinisphere, Trinisphere and Winter Orb
does have that text. Magic History Lesson.
Oh, did they errata it?
Yes, they did. So, quick Magic History lesson. I have on the screen an Alpha Winter Orb, which says Continuous Artifact. The effects from Continuous Artifacts were turned off if you tapped them. So, Winter Orb does that. And a lot of these kind of orb effects or Stax effects you can turn off by tapping them. So Winter Orb, Trinisphere, Static Orb are the big three in this deck. And with Urza's middle ability, you can turn them off, effectively negating them for yourself, because when you untap them, you untap everything else.
So this is what has gained Urza a lot of infamy, not just because he's a pile of text of three powerful abilities, but particularly because
he's the original questing beast. The 4-drop with the Declaration of Independence.
That is true. He has some of the most text on any. He is definitely up there in the top creatures as far as text. So why don't you kind of give us a quick rundown of all of his abilities and how they each influence the game plan?
Sure. I'll start bottom up. Urza's bottommost ability is 5 generic mana, shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. Obviously, this is a really cheap and easy infinite mana dump. You can generate infinite mana, dump it all into Urza, and activate him as many times as it takes you to find a Thassa's Oracle and get rid of your library. His middle ability is tap an untapped artifact you control, add blue. The nice thing about this ability is that it is not shut off by Null Rod, which is probably the most common way to attack artifact-based decks, because it's actually an ability on Urza.
Yeah, he has the ability. Important thing to always note about cards is the difference between the cost and the actual payoff of the ability. So here, Urza is you tap that artifact, and then Urza adds a blue. Right. It's not artifacts you control have tap to add a blue, which probably would have been a more balanced way they could design it, but
Well, they wanted to make Urza powerful. It was a big deal. This is the first time he's ever properly
That's
been on a
true.
card, I believe, other than like the
Yeah,
unhinged
there,
planeswalker or the
yeah,
unstable
and I believe it
planeswalker.
is confirmed that like there's like the Gray Seer or something. There's some old card called something.
Oh, Blind
I think
Seer. Yeah,
the Blind
supposedly that's
Seer,
Urza too. Anyways,
supposedly.
Urza's topmost ability is an ETB trigger. When he enters the battlefield, you create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Not only does this provide you with at least 1 mana back when Urza hits the table, but I was talking to Sean before we started recording, and thinking back over the games that I've played with Urza, I've won more times with beats from those tokens than I have by actually comboing off. Because
Yeah, because those get really big. Those get
Urza
like obscenely big.
Urza doesn't hit the table very often, and when he does, he doesn't stick around for long. I said that you should play this deck if you like to play with your commander, but on like a combo turn. Urza is hard to keep around, and he's hard to resolve. So if you're trying to
Yeah,
combo off with this deck, you want to make sure that you have something to back it up. This is a deck where you can't. You have less fun times trying to fire it off blind, or just fire it off with nothing to back it up, because Urza is really your linchpin, and if he gets to like too much mana, it's not unheard of to climb up there to cast him when he's like 10 or 12, but it's hard.
yeah, because everyone knows that Urza will be the linchpin of an Urza deck. His abilities very clearly show. Even for a player who hadn't heard of Urza before, they would be able to look at Urza and say, "This is a very important card for the deck. This deck is going to be built around that mana ability and that free card cast ability, that free cast ability." It's not that difficult to see, and with the infamy that Urza has, yeah, you're right. People are going to target Urza. Urza's not going to live if you don't have protection for Urza, which thankfully you do. You have a fairly decent. You're in blue. You have the best protection in the game, which is counter spells, and quite a number of free ones as well.
Yep, you get to run all the free counter spells other than deflecting SWAT. But yeah, you run a pretty robust interaction package. Pact of Negation, which is a common card in other combo decks like Ad Naus decks, is really great here because, like I said, you're only really casting Urza on a combo turn, and you kind of just need him to stick. Pact of Negation will get you there.
So what? So if I'm getting this right, the general game plan of this deck, what you want to do is you want to look for a hand, because mulligans are always very important. So you want to look for a hand that contains a good amount of ramp, good amount of artifacts, maybe a Stax piece. What would you say would be? Like, would that be something like an ideal hand for you? Maybe you have like a.
One thing I did want to comment on real briefly, which kind of answers your question, is the elephant in the room. That is, there was a mono blue infinite mana artifact based deck in our format, which in the form of Chainveil Teferi, which was a deck that I played for a long time, and there are a lot of similarities to this and Chainveil Teferi. The reason that I think Chainveil Teferi is kind of like, you should just be playing Urza, and I would never discourage anyone. If you really loved CVT, like, go for it. But Urza lets you cut some of the redundant or irrelevant or like very combo specific cards in favor of just kind of general good artifact cards. You don't have to dedicate slots to stuff like Ugin and Jace TMS as part of your win condition. That being said, you keep hands kind of, at least I keep hands kind of how I would in CVT. I tried to play it like a mid-rangey deck, even though this deck fires off a combo like a lot faster than CVT because your initial investment isn't as high. But it really depends on what else I'm seeing at the table. If I think I can combo off fast, I will look for a hand that lets me combo off fast. I played a game the other night where I was playing against like two other combo decks, and I kept a hand with Grim Monolith and Power Artifact because I was like, I need to go off very, very quickly here versus these other combo decks. So it really depends on what else you're seeing at the table. You are okay with playing a fast combo game, or you are okay with playing a slower, more Staxy game?
Interesting. So what would you say? So you would say that this deck holds quite a special place in your heart because of that mono blue kind of feel like Chain Veil to Fairy. How long did you play Chain Veil to Fairy?
I played Chain Veil to Fairy in conjunction with Duretti because they shared a lot of cards. So I don't know, it was probably for a good like 2 or 3 years I played Chain Veil to Fairy, which when I finally got an Urza, it was good to come back to this blue artifact strategy. It felt very familiar to me. Duretti was my main deck, but I played Teferi if I wanted to win. I love Duretti. He's my boy, but sometimes it's hard for him to get there.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Yeah, so that's really cool that you found a new kind of modern take on kind of an older deck. You know, it's always sad when old decks kind of fall out of the power tier of where everything is, but that just happens some days. You know, there's old decks like High Tide Jace that that used to be a deck, or Zur the Enchanter doing things with like a Shimmer, like Shimmer Zur. That used to be a deck from like a few years ago. You don't really see it much anymore. It just doesn't. It's either not consistent enough or it doesn't keep up anymore. It's not fast enough.
Actually, I'm going to push back on you a little bit here. I think that those decks are perfectly fine. Because, as I have mentioned before, if you're comfortable playing Shimmerzer and that's your deck and you know it inside and out and you eat, sleep, and breathe Shimmerzer, you are going to be able to take down a tournament a lot easier than someone who has copy-pasted a Opus Thief list and has never, knows CEDH but has never shuffled up and played that deck before. I feel like you would be able to win as the Shimmerzer player. So, and same thing with Chain Veil Teferi. If you don't want to play Urza and you want to play Chain Veil Teferi, comboing off with Planeswalkers is cool. You get definite style points for that, but yeah, I kind of retired my Chain Veil Teferi deck a long time ago. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to concur with you on that. If you were when I say that a deck has been pushed out of the meta, that by no means that it can't compete at all. It's just that it's fallen out of commonplace usage, where you used to see like Chain Veil Teferi and Zur everywhere because they were like the top dogs for a while. They were decks to play a lot. They've fallen out of common usage. But I completely agree. If you are, whether it be a new deck that you've made that isn't like a meta deck, or an old deck that you've had around for a long time and you've been updating and you're like a master of it, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you that if you have a deck that is just like your baby and you know the ins and outs of this deck to a T, then you're gonna beat someone who just like buys up let's use a stereotypical deck like Blue Farm. There's like, all right, we're gonna play Timna Crom ad nauseum and we're gonna just go crazy. You're gonna destroy them. You're gonna absolutely destroy them. So yeah, absolutely.
Real quick, because I think we're running a little long. I wanted to mention a couple of cards, if I could. Just a couple kind of weirder cards, or cards that might need a little bit of explanation. Time Spiral is a card nobody's seen ever, because Ad Nauseam is so powerful, and nobody likes getting domed for 6 for a Twister effect. Urza, it's wonderful because you are playing it basically as fairly as possible, which is just a mana neutral twister. You can run High Tide in this deck. I do not run High Tide in this deck because I'm running a couple other utility lands over another like a 13th or 14th island. But if you have a high enough density of islands, you could run High Tide in this, and Time Spiral is really good with that. But just as a straight mana neutral wheel, it's really, really good. Tribute Mage it seems like an odd choice at first until I say that it gets you half of either of your infinite mana combos in the deck. It can find your Grim Monolith for Power Artifact, or it can find your Icecrown Scepter for Dramatic Reversal. So, not only that, it can also find stuff like Winter Orb as a Stax effect, or Spellskite to draw removal away from Urza. So, it's a surprisingly versatile tutor. And then
honestly, I love all of the mages, like Trinket Mage, Tribute Mage, Tribute Mage. Those are some of my favorite cards.
Speaking of favorite cards, I'm gonna say this is probably a requirement for this deck, which if you don't have one, proxy it and play it. This Mishra's Workshop is my favorite land in all of Commander. I love artifacts. I love tapping lands for more mana than just one. And Mishra's Workshop allows you to do silly things like a turn 1 Trinisphere, which, when you're sitting with a handful of mana rocks and other lands and suddenly no one can play anything for 3 turns, it feels really, really good.
And the best part about it is it's a singular land. Like, oftentimes you'll see a Trinisphere played with, like, someone plays, like, a land and a mana crypt. This is just, you just have the land, you play it, cast your Trinisphere, or you play it, cast your mana rocks, whatever, and then you're free to do whatever else you want with your turn. It's just one singular land. And, it's like, I've played a little bit with it in some other decks, and in artifact heavy decks, and honestly, it's such a fun card. It's unfortunate that it's $2,400 US dollars.
It was only printed once, but damn if it isn't a really, really powerful card. And then the last card I wanted to talk about is Tabernacle of Pendleville. Especially in this tight ad nauseam mana-based world we live in, making them pay 1 every upkeep for every creature they have still gets the job done, no matter what deck you're in.
Yeah, whether it be a kind of more creature light decks where they have to pay for their commanders, or especially if you run up against like dork decks, that absolutely just ruins them. Yep. You know, they have to tap their dorks to pay for themselves, and it's like, well, there goes all my mana advantage. You know, there's everything they were counting on to pull ahead in the game. And yeah, Tabernacle is a consistently powerful card. It's absolutely insane. So before we wrap this up, if you were to give a quick couple of like pros or strengths and cons or weaknesses to tell someone so someone could judge whether they would want to play this deck or not.
Pros, you get to play with some of the most powerful cards in our format because you're in blue. So you get to play all of the forces, you get to play all of these powerful twisters and some of the old artifact-related cards like Transmute Artifact and Power Artifact. You get to, if you used to play Chainveil Teferi and it's just not getting the job done, this is, I would say, probably the upgraded version of Chainveil Teferi. So if you're trying to scratch that mono-blue artifact deck itch, even Arkham Dagson, like, if you like artifact decks and you want to stay in mono blue and you still have most of the pieces, transition into Urza. If you like winning through beats, because that will happen more often than not. There have been a bunch of games where I've won by just turning the Urza constructs which can get up to like 14-14s or 15-15s like really easily, just turning those sideways and winning through beats. So if you like doing that, this is a deck for that. And if you like the feeling of just breaking the game wide open by casting one creature, this is the deck for you. I think I DM'd Sean after the first couple nights I played Urza, and I said, this feels gross. It feels like I'm cheating.
I remember that.
Yeah, he's a very powerful card, which kind of brings me to my cons. If you don't like your stuff getting countered like all the damn time, don't play Urza. And if you're not comfortable piloting a Stax deck, don't play Urza, because while you can, there are times where I play this deck and I barely play any Stax pieces at all. Knowing that that's an option in the back of my mind is like, that's what makes the deck so good, is that it can pivot on it like really easily from a Stax deck into a combo deck, or from a combo deck into a Stax deck. And I'd say to play it, you probably have to be proficient in both archetypes. You can't have, with Urza, you can't have one without the other, really, because the power of the deck lies in the artifact-based combos in conjunction with stuff like Winter Orb, which you can circumvent with his ability.
Yeah. So you would say it's not a novice-friendly deck. You know, it has a lot of intricate working pieces to it that you can very easily mess up.
I would say on the surface, it looks like a very easy deck to pilot because your commander is just so rawly powerful. But once you get into it, the sequencing is probably some of the most complex sequencing I've ever had to do for a deck. Because you have to try and combo through your own Stax pieces sometimes. It's... I would agree with you. This is probably not a novice-friendly deck. If you're looking to get into CEDH, I would maybe approach this one a little further down the road.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to say about the deck before we head on out of here?
I don't know. I want to mention that one time I won a game by Narset's reversaling a demonic consultation to find Cyclonic Rift and bust up my friend's Marchesa's Stax lock. So
that's hilarious.
Demonic consultation is good even in a mono blue deck.
Yeah, we're just talking about personal cards that we love. Narset's Reversal was
that card is fantastic and should probably be in most blue decks because of the utility it has.
Yeah. If you can afford if you feel like you can afford like more slots for like blue counter spells, then yeah, it's a really fun one. You know, if you've ever Narset's to peer into the abyss, then You're winning. Good. You're winning the game.
Yep.
You're winning life.
Feels good.
So, if you would like to hear more from us in the future, you can catch us on Twitter. My co-host Josh is at @2inABlue. I am Death Singer Lee on Twitter. You can follow our show at SBScast, and of course, make sure you're here on YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, likes and subscribe. Leave us a comment below what you think of the deck. And also, if there are any other decks that you would be interested in seeing, you can either add us on Twitter and let us know, or you can comment down below and tell us that there, and subscribe. And if you want, you can ring the bell to get it right into your notification feed. If we have any, when we have more new uploads come out, we usually upload on Sundays around noon. Is there anything else you want to say before we head out?
Nope.
All right. I think that should wrap everything up.
See you guys next time.
Take care.